Morning. Today we are going to talk about the thyroid gland. So at the end of the session, you should know about the in detail about the thyroid gland, its gross features, relations, blood supply, development, and applied anatomy. Apart from this, you should also know about the parathyroid gland, the gross features, and development. Now we'll take up the thyroid gland. It's an endocrine gland situated in the lower part of the front and sides of the neck. It regulates the BMR. It stimulates both somatic as well as psychic growth. It helps in calcium metabolism. The thyroid gland is butterfly in shape. It contains a central part called isthmus, and on either sides we have the lobes. The isthmus extends between the second, third, and fourth tracheal rings, while the lobes extend superiorly from the oblique line of thyroid cartilage up to the fifth or sixth tracheal rings. So, coming to the lobes, the two lobes are joined by isthmus. So, occasionally we may have a pyramidal lobe which projects upwards from the isthmus. So, sometimes a fibrous band or a fibromuscular band called levator glandulae thyroideae may be present. This descends from the body of hyoid bone up to the isthmus. The thyroid contains two capsules, a true capsule and a false capsule. The true capsule is a peripheral condensation of the connective tissue. The false capsule is derived from the pretracheal fascia. It is thin along the posterior border and it forms the suspensory ligament, which is a thickening on the medial surface connected to the cricoid cartilage. Because of its connection with the cricoid cartilage, the thyroid gland moves with deglutition. The capillary plexus lies deep to the true capsule. So both the thyroid gland and prostate gland are having the two capsules. Both are having true capsule and false capsule. The main difference between the thyroid and prostate gland are the venous plexus, which are present in the thyroid gland, lies deep to the true capsule, while the venous plexus, in case of prostate gland, is present in between the true capsule and false capsule. So now we are going to talk about the lobes and isthmus of the thyroid gland. So situation. So coming to the lobes, each lobe lies against the fifth, sixth, seventh cervical vertebra and T1, that is the thoracic vertebra. Each lobe extends from the oblique line of thyroid cartilage up to the fourth or fifth tracheal rings. The isthmus extends from the second to fourth tracheal rings. So you can again see both the lobes as well as the isthmus. So now we'll go on to the particular relations between the lobes and isthmus. So in case of lobes, we are going to talk about the apex, base, its surfaces and borders. While in case of isthmus, we'll be talking about the surfaces and borders. So lobes, it contains an apex, a base, three surfaces, that is lateral surface, medial surface and posterolateral surface. Borders, there are two borders, anterior border and posterior border. Coming to the apex, it extends up to the oblique line of thyroid cartilage. Here it is wedged between the two muscles, that is the sternothyroid muscle and the inferior constrictor muscle of the pharynx. Hence, any thyroid swelling will not grow beyond the oblique line of thyroid cartilage. The base extends up to the fourth or fifth tracheal rings. So thyroid swellings can only extend below but not above. Coming to the surfaces, so the lateral surface, it is covered mainly by the muscles. The muscles are sternothyroid, sternohyoid, superior belly of omohyoid and sternocleidomastoid. So lateral surface is mainly covered by the muscles, that is the sternothyroid, sternohyoid, superior belly of omohyoid and the sternocleidomastoid. The medial surface is related to two tubes, that is the pharynx and larynx. Similarly, you are going to find the trachea and esophagus. Two muscles, inferior constrictor muscle and the cricothyroid muscle. It is related to two nerves, external laryngeal nerve and the recurrent laryngeal nerve. The posterolateral surface, in short, is related to carotid sheath and its contents. So some of the contents I'd like to name, that is the common carotid artery, the internal carotid artery, external carotid artery, the vagus nerve, sympathetic trunk, ansa cervicalis, etc. So kindly refer the carotid sheath which has been dealt in detail in the previous sections. So anterior border, it is thin, it is related to the anterior branch of superior thyroid artery. The posterior border is thick and rounded. There is anastomosis between the superior and inferior thyroid arteries. It contains the parathyroid glands and the thoracic duct is related to the left side. So next we are going on to the isthmus. It contains two surfaces, the anterior surface and posterior surface, two borders, superior border and inferior border. So the anterior surface, both the right and left sternothyroid and sternohyoid muscles, and it is also related to the anterior jugular veins. The posterior surface lies against the second, third, and fourth tracheal rings. The upper border. Here we are going to find the anastomosis between the right and left superior thyroid arteries. From its lower border, the inferior thyroid veins emerges below. So coming to the arterial supply, it is mainly supplied by the following arteries, that is the superior thyroid artery, which is a branch of the external carotid artery, the inferior thyroid artery, which is a branch of the thyrocervical trunk, and occasionally we have the thyroidema artery. This, if it is present, may arise either from the brachiocephalic trunk or the arch of aorta. So the venous drainage is by the following veins: the superior thyroid vein, which drains into the internal jugular vein; the middle thyroid vein also drains into the internal jugular vein; the inferior thyroid vein, which emerges from the lower border of the isthmus, usually drains into the left brachiocephalic vein. And occasionally we may have what is called as the fourth thyroid vein or the Cocker's vein. This emerges between the middle and inferior thyroid veins and drains into the internal jugular vein. During removal of the thyroid gland, so we have to always search for this Cocker's vein and secure it, or it may cause hemorrhage. Coming to the lymphatic drainage, we have the upper cervical lymph nodes. This drains the upper part of the gland. The lower deep cervical lymph nodes drains the lower part of the gland. So nerve supply. It is supplied by the middle cervical ganglia, superior and inferior cervical ganglia. Both of these are vasoconstrictors. So coming to the development, it starts its development in the third week of intrauterine life. It develops as an endodermal thickening behind the tuberculum impar, that is from the foramen and cecum. This thickening forms a diverticulum called the thyroglossal duct. This descends slightly to the left of the midline and in front of the thyroid cartilage. It bifurcates into two lobes of thyroid and central portion forms the isthmus. The portion of thyroglossal duct near the isthmus forms the pyramidal lobe. This is the first gland to become functional, that is the seventh week of intrauterine life. Sometimes the pyramidal lobe may be attached to the hyoid bone by a fibrous or a fibromuscular band called a levator glandulae thyroideae. The neural crust cells and cells of the ultimobranchial body becomes incorporated into the thyroid, and they form what is called as the C cells or the parafollicular cells. Again, here you can see the foramen cecum from which is present in the tongue. So you can see endodermal thickening and a downgrowth called a thyroglossal duct. So this bifurcates so to form the two lobes and a central portion called the isthmus. And we have the incorporation of the ultimobranchial body. So thyroglossal duct forms a remnant. So in this way you can see the development of the isthmus as well as the two lateral lobes. So coming to some of the anomalies, we can see the lingual thyroid or thyroglossal cyst or ectopic thyroid, apart from various other anomalies which you can read from you can refer the textbook on embryology. So to examine the thyroid gland, we are going to stand behind and examine the thyroid, what is called as the bimanual, which you are going to use your two hands to palpate or the fingers to palpate the thyroid gland. You ask the patient to swallow. So if the thyroid gland moves with deglutition, we can confirm it is the thyroid gland swelling. If it does not move during deglutition or swallowing, so it is not a thyroid swelling. So thyroidectomy, so you have to we are removing the thyroid gland along with both the capsules. Similarly, we have the partial thyroidectomy, where the posterior lobes have to be retained to prevent post-operative myxedema. So you have to leave behind the parathyroid glands. During operation, the superior thyroid artery is ligated near the gland to save the external laryngeal nerve. And inferior thyroid artery is ligated away from the gland to save the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Hypothyroidism. So this causes cretinism in infants and myxedema in adults. So here you have to differentiate hypothyroidism from that of hypopituitarism. In case of hypothyroidism, the child is not only short but also mentally retarded. But in case of pituitary dwarf, you are seeing the child will be a dwarf but mentally stable. Apart from this, we are going to find the benign tumors which may either displace or compress the neighboring structures. So here you can see the enlargement of the thyroid gland, which is called as goiter. Coming to the parathyroid glands, These are two pairs of small endocrine glands. They lie along the posterior border of the thyroid gland. They lie within the false capsule of the gland. The superior parathyroid, also called as parathyroid 4, and the inferior parathyroid, also called as parathyroid 3, they secrete the parathormone which controls metabolism of calcium and phosphorus along with the thyrocalcitonin. Each parathyroid gland is size of a split pea. So to find the position of the parathyroid glands, the anastomotic artery between the superior and inferior thyroid artery is usually a good guide. The superior parathyroid lies in the middle of the posterior border of the lobe of the gland, dorsal to the recurrent laryngeal nerve. The inferior parathyroid is variable in position. It may either lie within the thyroid capsule below the inferior thyroid artery, or it may lie behind and outside the capsule above the inferior thyroid artery. Sometimes it may lie within the substance of the lobe, ventral to the recurrent laryngeal nerve. So, vascular supply. It is supplied by the inferior thyroid artery and also the anastomosis between the inferior and superior thyroid arteries. Vascular supply, so veins and lymphatics similar to the thyroid gland. Nerve supply by middle and superior cervical ganglia. So, coming to the development of the parathyroid glands, the inferior parathyroid are derived from the endoderm of the third pharyngeal pouch or parathyroid 3. They are in close proximity, so they develop along with the thymus, while superior parathyroid are derived from the endoderm of the fourth pharyngeal pouch or parathyroid 4, so which is in close proximity with that of the thyroid. So the superior parathyroid or parathyroid 4, which develops on the fourth pharyngeal pouch, is more constant as it develops in close proximity with the thyroid gland, while the inferior parathyroid, as it develops along with the thymus, are also called as the third parathyroid 3. As the thymus position varies as it descends into the thorax, so hence the inferior parathyroid or parathyroid 3, the position will vary. So inferior may descend to the lower part of the neck, or also it may also may descend into the anterior mediastinum. So tumors of the parathyroid, so there may be excessive secretion of the parathormone, thereby increased removal of calcium from the bones, making them weak and liable to fracture. So it may also cause formation of stones in the kidneys. Hypoparathyroidism, so accidental removal of the gland during thyroidectomy. So hypocalcemia leading to increased neuromuscular irritability causing muscular spasm and convulsions. So the condition is called as tetany. So coming to the assignments, so very important question, the thyroid gland. So it will come as a main question, the gross anatomy of the thyroid gland. And apart from that, semi-essay questions, the coverings of the thyroid gland, relations of the thyroid gland, blood supply, both arterial and venous supply of the thyroid gland, lymphatic drainage, microscopy or histology of thyroid gland, development of the thyroid gland and its anomalies. So applied aspects, that is the relationship between the superior and inferior thyroid arteries to the nerves. Apart from that, applied anatomy and parathyroid gland, blood supply and development.